Okay, some quick review. What do we call the study of how people and societies make decisions in the face of scarcity? Hopefully you got that. All right, today's lesson is on the production possibilities frontier, which is a decision-making tool. So it's an economic tool. So here's an example of a production possibilities frontier. When we say frontier, we're literally talking about the curve here. This is what we mean when we say the frontier, this curve. Production possibilities frontier is a graphic representation showing all the possible combinations of two goods when an economy, or a business for that matter, is producing at full potential. Just a review of the concept from a previous class, economic choices we make are a direct reflection of our values. That's going to be a theme that we look at throughout the lesson today. But as a review, according to the economic choices illustrated in this meme, which does this person's friend value more, himself or his girlfriend? According to this meme, according to the economic choices illustrated in this meme, which does this person value more, fashion or helping those in need? Now in economics we have this expression called guns or butter. Now this is something you need to put in your notes. So get some paper and write down that expression, guns or butter. It could show up on a quiz, wink wink. An expression used in economics to demonstrate the relationship between a nation's investment in military goods, which is what we mean when we say guns, and civilian goods, which is what we mean when we say butter. So again, economics is a study of how societies make decisions in the face of scarcity. And so we're going to look today at how different countries might either favor using their scarce resources for military goods, and other societies where, based on their values, they may choose to use the majority of their scarce resources more on civilian goods than on military goods. This is the conversation we're talking about when we use the economics expression guns or butter. And then the production possibilities frontier shows us exactly where a country is in terms of this value decision on whether or not to choose to spend more of scarce resources on butter or on guns. And you can read, and we'll get into how to read the production possibilities frontier in a minute. It is a decision-making tool as well, though. It's not just an analysis tool, it's also a decision-making tool. It helps a organization or a country determine what the costs will be of particular production levels. So, if the PPF, remember the PPF, when we're talking about the PPF, the production possibilities frontier, we're talking about this curve. If the curve were graphed this way, how many units of guns are being produced? And the decision to produce at this point would indicate what about this country, whatever country this is, this country's values. In other words, according to the PPF, which does this government value more, its own military power or the everyday needs of civilians? Next, how many units of butter are being produced at this production point? How many units of butter are being produced at this production point? And the decision to produce at this point would indicate what about this country's values? In other words, according to the PPF, which does this government value more, a government that sets production at this point, its own military power or the everyday needs of civilians? Now, usually, countries or businesses set production at a point where both items are being produced to a certain amount. So at this point, if a country chose to set production at this point, how many units of guns are being produced? How many units of butter are being produced? The decision to produce at this point would indicate what about this country, this imaginary country's values. The frontier or curve shows the limit. This curve shows the limit of what can be produced, meaning all possible combinations when all resources are fully utilized. So according to this PPF, what is the maximum units of military goods this country can produce? And according to this PPF, what is the maximum units of civilian goods this country can produce? Now at production point D, how many units of guns would be produced? How many units of butter would be produced? According to the PPF, is this country able to set production at this level, at level D? Setting production levels outside the PPF curve is called an unattainable level of production. Production levels cannot be set anywhere outside the frontier. Unattainable production means that even if all current resources, land, labor, capital in the country were fully employed, this level of production is impossible. Any one of these points is impossible. It's to the right or above the PPF. The country cannot produce at this level under the current conditions. Now, production levels can be set anywhere on the frontier. So this point, this point, this point, this country can set production levels here. And in fact, setting production levels directly on the PPF curve is considered an efficient level of production. Efficient production means that all resources are being fully employed to produce the most goods and services possible. And you want to get this definition for efficient production in your notes. Therefore, it is impossible to produce more of one item without producing less of the other. And that's how the PPF helps us understand trade-offs. And we're going to get to that in a minute. But because at this point, all the resources that are available are being used, it means you could not go and set production here because, well, first of all, it's impossible. And so to set production anywhere else and still be efficient, you're going to have to give up one thing or another to do that. And we'll get into that in a minute. Production levels can be set anywhere within the frontier. So you can set production anywhere inside the frontier, meaning to the left or below this curve. But setting production levels directly within the PPF curve is considered an inefficient level of production. Inefficient production means that not all resources are being fully employed. It is still possible to increase production of both goods, in this case, guns or butter. This could occur during a recession, when there's high unemployment, so human resources aren't being used to its full potential, in a developing country, or in a country that wishes to protect the beauty of its natural spaces. We certainly don't work at full efficient production because we like being able to go to Yosemite. We kind of don't want to cut all those trees down so that we have a nice place to go on vacation. But according to economics, that's considered inefficient production. Not all resources are being fully employed. That's, again, that word resources, I want you to try and remember some review from yesterday. What is that vocabulary word from yesterday's or last class lesson that means the natural resources, capital resources, and human resources? What's the word that encompasses all those resources? Factors of production. So inefficient production means that not all the factors of production are being utilized to their full potential. Now, let's do some practice. At production level X, is that considered efficient, inefficient, or unattainable, or impossible? Production level A, is that considered efficient, inefficient, or unattainable? production level B? Is that considered efficient, inefficient, or unattainable? What about production level C? Is that efficient, inefficient, or unattainable? Okay. And, here's some more. What if you set production at 1 leather jacket and 6 computers? Would that be considered efficient, inefficient, or unattainable? What if you set production at 6 computers and 3 leather jackets? Would that be considered efficient, inefficient, or unattainable? And what if you set production at 14 computers and no leather jackets? Would that be considered efficient, inefficient, or unattainable, or impossible? Okay, now, the PPF does not actually show reality since it assumes that only 2 goods are being produced by a country. It's simply a simplification that shows what sort of trade-offs would be made in reality when a country decides to produce more of one good or service and less of another. So PPFs are used to demonstrate trade-offs. Now, a trade-off is the exchange of one thing for another of more or less equal value. So, for example, you have time and you have time to earn money or time to sleep. You need sleep or you'll literally go insane, but you also need money or you won't have a place to live. So these are items of relatively equal value. They're both very important for survival, but sometimes we have to trade them off. Sometimes we have to go to work instead of being able to take that nap we really want to take. And that's an example of a trade-off. Everything that is scarce requires a choice, and these choices always involve a trade-off. And we've been talking about this when you come to class. There's a trade-off. You exchange one thing for another. You exchange your free time in exchange for, hopefully, a better future because you are being disciplined to get a better education. That's a trade-off. So the PPF we use to show trade-offs in numerical form. Any 2 or more points on the frontier represent a trade-off. If Alpha country, this pretend country, decided to set production at point A, how many units of guns would they be choosing to produce? How many units of butter would they be choosing to produce? What if Alpha country decided to shift production from point A to point B? By moving production from point A to point B, what is being lost? So look at these numbers and follow the red arrow. Which numbers are going down? Are units of guns or units of butter? Which one is being lost? How many units of guns are lost by moving from production point A to point B? And by moving from production point A to B, what is being gained? Now look at those arrows. What's being gained? Units of guns or units of butter? And how many units of butter are being gained? Okay, so that is your illustration of a trade-off. We lost it by moving production from point A to point B. A loss of 600 guns was traded for a gain of 1,100 units of butter. So PPF is also used to show not just trade-offs, but opportunity costs. So let's do a review. What is the definition of opportunity cost? If you have to, check your notes. The value of the best alternative that you did not choose. So in this illustrated trade-off that we just talked about, what is being lost, guns or butter? This is the opportunity cost. The loss of 600 gun units is the opportunity cost of choosing to set production at level B. So moving from A to B represents a trade-off to gain more butter. Moving from B to A represents a trade-off to gain more guns. So we're going to practice this. Okay, so let's say we are at production level C in a particular country, and they decide to shift production to production level E. What is the trade-off? Now let's say that country goes from production level G to production level C. What is the trade-off? Let's say another country moves from production level A to production level E. What is the opportunity cost? And let's say a different country goes from production level G to production level E. What is the opportunity cost? What is the opportunity cost for moving production from level A, production level A, to production level G? And what is the opportunity cost of going the other way around, to go from production level G to production level A? Okay, besides trade-offs and opportunity cost, the PPF can, and efficiency levels and all the other things we've covered, PPF can also be used to show economic development. So if if some sort of economic development happens, you'll actually see the curve itself shift out if there's some sort of growth. And this may occur due to additional resources discovered in a country, increased education of the population, which makes them more able to produce the new things, increased in labor force, more population that can work. Some sort of new technology is developed. Any one of these major shifts in a country's abilities or factors of production could cause the curve to actually expand outward. This is any increase or improvement in the factors of production. Now, the PPF can also show economic decline by moving inward. For example, a war. Countries go to war, particularly our Civil War. Our Civil War was terrible for our PPF. Lots of destruction of bridges and factories and farms and a lot of deaths of humans, which of course affects the labor force. Those sorts of things can move a production possibilities frontier inward. So this may occur due to resources running out, decreased education of the population, decrease of labor force, declining infrastructure. Any decline of the factors of production can cause the PPF to shift inward. And that is all for this lesson.